Hello my sweet friends, welcome back. It's the end of another month, which means it is wrap up time. And I feel like this one's gonna be an interesting one because I was in a reading slump for half the month. Then I finally came out of that. I had a 5-star read. I also have one DNF. I also have a couple books that I wish I DNF'd. So I feel like I've got some real variety here. But let's just go back to the start of the month. The first book that I finished in February was In a Jam by, I think it's Kate Canterbury. It's on Kindle Unlimited and it is a small town romance, single parent trope, kind of a one that got away romance. But the basic premise for this novel is we have a female main character who has just gone through a really traumatic breakup, and she finds out that she has inherited a farm, and to follow through with the will and make sure everything is all good, she has to live at the farm, I think for a year. So she moves to the farm, which is in the small town that she grew up in, or at least spent a lot of her teenage years in, and quite quickly she bumps into the guy that she was best friends with as a teenager and she hasn't seen in like over a decade. But our male main character, you find out very quickly, has always been in love with our female main character. Even when they were teenagers, even though nothing happened, he has just been obsessed with her forever. Also, our male main character is now the sole carer slash guardian for his niece. It's a bit of a single parent trope. I think the niece is around like 4 or 5 years old. She was an absolute highlight of this book for me. I absolutely adored her. She was so funny, so entertaining. Without her in this book, it wouldn't have been nearly as good as it was. But as for my thoughts on this book, the first half of this book, literally until the 50% mark, I was like, this is going to be a 5-star read. But as soon as we got to around the halfway mark and they actually started getting together, I started getting bored. Which I know this is a personal issue, it happens a lot, but I just love seeing the pining and the like cute little romantic moments, the really like wholesome, fluffy, like they looked at each other or they like touched hands. All of those sort of things are so cute. Also, I feel like this is one of those books where, again, this is personal preference, the author prioritized smart over plot, and that just disappointed me because I feel like there was so much potential for a really great plot with a really great romance. Like you can have both, and that for me is just like, please don't sacrifice plot for smart. But again, I fully understand that that is just like my personal preference. It was just frustrating to me because I was like, oh my gosh, there was so much potential for this to be a literal 5-star read and it just completely fell off for me. First half 5-star, second half 3-star. I decided to average it out and I gave this book 4 stars overall. I also feel like this book was the start of my reading slump. The second half in particular, I just kind of felt myself starting to get slumpy. However, then I picked up Jasper Vale, which is the 4th book in the Eden series. The Edens is a small town romance series. This one just came out at the end of January and it is Eloise and Jasper's story, and I really loved this one. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite out of all of them. If I were to rank the books in this series so far, actually this is hard because when I first read Indigo Ridge, which is the first book, I gave it 5 stars and then I gave the second book 4.5 stars. However, in reflection and like now that I can look back, I think the plot in the first book was my favorite, but I think the romance in the second book was my favorite. The third book was good to me, but it didn't like stand out. And this I also rated 4 stars, but I would put it above the third book. Like I think this is my third favorite. I honestly really enjoyed this one. I feel like Garnet Flats is probably my least favorite, if I'm being honest. It just, yeah, it didn't stand out to me, but they're all just really fun, quick reads. I think they're all on Kindle Unlimited right now, so I definitely recommend checking them out. And then I picked up The Light We Lost. I should have DNF'd this. This was not good. I gave this 2.5 stars and I was really sad because this was a 5-star prediction for me. I thought I was going to absolutely love this. This is a right person, wrong time kind of story. It's about Lucy and Gabe who meet in New York. I think they're both in college at the time, and then we kind of follow both of their lives. I think specifically Lucy's really. I think we're in like Lucy's head until they're like middle-aged basically. And it's one of those classic stories where they're so in love with each other but it's never the right timing and they can never make it work, which is fair enough. That is like a very real issue that people have to deal with. Like sometimes a relationship is not as simple as, oh, we love each other so we're gonna be together. Like I get that, and this story definitely showcases that. But my real issue with this book is basically Lucy knows that she's in love with Gabe, but they also know that they can't be together because they both kind of are prioritizing other things. But then Lucy goes and meets another guy who she then falls in love with, or at least she keeps saying she's in love with him, she's in love with him, and she marries him. And the whole time while she's married to this man, she is basically in her head pining after Gabe, who it seems is like almost like her long lost one true love. And it was so frustrating because it's basically emotional cheating, in my opinion. If you are married to someone or even just in a relationship with someone, but you're still pining after someone else and wishing you were with someone else, that is emotional cheating in my mind. And it's really hard to love a book where the main character Lucy is so selfish and keeps kind of making excuses for her behavior and for her like pining basically. And I get that you can't help how you feel about someone, but maybe if you can't help how you feel about someone, you shouldn't marry someone else. And that just really held me back from liking Lucy at all, or really being able to root for Lucy and Gabe to be together. I think it would have been a totally different scenario if Lucy hadn't married someone else. That is just such a difficult thing for me to get past. So this was a 2.5 star read for me, and it was only 2.5 stars because there were some really beautiful moments in this book, but overall I just could not root for the characters. So I honestly should have DNF'd this book. I really thought there would be something in this book that would change, that would make me love it. Like somehow they would kind of fix everything and make it right, but in my opinion that never happened. And after that I was definitely in a slump. But of course I still tried to read some books, and so I did finish 2 books while I was in the midst of the slump. One of the ones that I picked up was The Do-Over by Lynn Painter, and I'm really glad that I picked this up. I think this is a great reading slump book because it's quick, it's under 300 pages, it's YA, it's full of fluff, and I think that was just exactly what I needed at the time. So I would definitely recommend this if you like YA, fluffy, cheesy romances. This is kind of a Groundhog Day situation where our main character Emily is stuck reliving Valentine's Day over and over again, and there does end up being a really cute romance in the story as well. I will say it kind of felt like the romance took a back seat in this book. The Groundhog Day situation was really like the forefront of the plot, which makes sense, but if you're going into this for a really great romance, I feel like this is not really the book for that. It's definitely like a cute story with a side of romance, and the romance is a bit insta-lovey because obviously she's reliving the same day over and over again, so they're kind of like meeting each other for the first time every day, so it is a bit insta-lovey. But overall I think it was just like what I was in the mood for. It was just light and fun and easy, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Definitely nowhere near as good as Better Than the Movies in my opinion, but just a really fun, easy read. However, I do have one issue with this book, and I don't know if I just missed it or I didn't pick up on it when it was said, but why did the Groundhog Day happen? If anyone has read this and is able to explain why the day kept repeating itself, I would love to know, because I feel like usually in these sort of books we get an explanation as to why the day kept repeating, and I kept waiting for that moment to happen in this book, but like I do not remember ever getting an explanation as to why this Groundhog Day existed. Like it was just like a glitch in the system. Like someone explain that to me. I also ended up reading a book that I would not recommend reading whilst in a reading slump because this took me so long to get through. It's the only fantasy book, I think. Yeah, it's the only fantasy book that I read this month, but it is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare, and this one is fairly thick, around 670 pages, and it is just not a reading slump book. But I kind of was halfway through and I was like, I may as well just keep going. So I ended up rating this 3.75 stars, and I think I potentially could have rated it higher if I wasn't in a reading slump, but overall I did enjoy it. It just took me a little while to like really get into it, and again, I'm not sure if that was because I was in a reading slump or if it was just because of the book itself. But this is the first book in the Dark Artifices by Cassandra Clare, which is a trilogy within the Shadowhunters universe. I feel like Cassandra Clare creates such amazing characters, so likable, and really great romances as well. I feel like there's always a great plot and a great romance, and that's just like my favorite thing ever. But if you guys have read other Cassandra Clare books and you enjoyed them, I definitely think you'd enjoy this. Then we have my saving grace. This is the book that got me out of my slump, which is actually very surprising. Usually long books don't get you out of slumps, but this one did for me. And this is also the only 5-star read that I have from February. Wow. This was so good. I was super blessed to be able to receive an early copy of this book. However, by the time you guys are watching this video, it is now available at all your local bookstores, so you guys can all get your hands on it, and I beg you, please go read this book. It is so freaking cute. This is the second book in the Knock 'Em Out trilogy. The first book is called Things We Never Got Over, and I would describe it as a grumpy sunshine, small town romance, single parent trope, a hint of mystery, and a decent amount of spice. The second book still has the amazing small town vibes. I love Knock 'Em Out. That's the name of the town. It is so freaking cute. The first book is about Knox and Naomi, and this book is about Nash and Lena, and Nash is Knox's brother. So that's kind of the link that we get. I would very highly suggest that you read the first book before you read this one. The plot of this book and like the mystery element of this book heavily revolves around the incidents that occur and like the plot of the first book. So read that first, otherwise this one won't make as much sense. But also the first book is so good. I rated the first one 4.5, but like I said, this one was a 5-star read for me. It was even better than the first, which I don't think I was expecting that. I would describe Nash as a very like stand-up guy. He is the chief of police, so he is very protective over his town and over all of the people that he loves. He loves the idea of just like settling down and getting married and having kids. Just your classic nice guy, I would say. But at the end of the first book, he went through some stuff that was pretty traumatic, and he's now kind of suffering the emotional effects of that, I guess you could say, or the psychological effects of that. And then we have Lena, who is kind of like his next door neighbor. She lives in his apartment block, and she's basically the opposite of Nash. She loves living life on the edge. I wouldn't necessarily say she's like a bad girl, but she loves to take risks. She loves danger. She doesn't like the idea of settling down. I'll leave it at that. You can assume what happens. I will say there is a very cute dog involved in this, which was such a highlight for me. And we also get to see a lot of kind of like this found family of Nox and Naomi, Nash and Lena, and then also Lucian and Sloane. I absolutely love the found family aspect of their like friendship, I guess. And if you don't know, there is a third book coming, I think September this year, and that will be Lucian and Sloane's story, and I'm so excited for that. I literally cannot wait. I think it's going to be second chance romance, and I'm so excited. So excited. So if you can't tell, I definitely recommend this book. The next book that I picked up is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I freaking love this. I gave it 4.5 stars. The only reason it wasn't a 5-star read for me is it just didn't have that 5-star feeling, but it almost did. It really almost could have been a 5-star, I think. It really shocked me by how much I enjoyed it. I feel like it's a little bit out of my comfort zone. I think it's technically historical fiction, but it gives me kind of those literary fiction vibes, which is just not my normal thing, but I adored this story. I think there's something to be said about the difference between a book and a story. In the same way there's a difference between a romance and a love story. I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes when you read a book, you're like, this is a story. It just feels like the pages are coming to life. It feels like these characters are so real. There's this sense of like, I don't want to say magic, because obviously this is not a fantasy book, but the author just makes you feel things. And that is how this book felt to me. I honestly feel like I'm going to butcher an explanation of like the plot or the summary of this book, so I'm just going to read the back because I feel like it just says it better than I ever would. But it says, Stella and Desiree are identical twins growing up together in a small southern black community. Until age 16, they run away. Years later, everything about their lives is different. Their families, communities, and racial identities. One sister lives with her black daughter in the same southern town that she once tried to escape. The other sister secretly passes as white, and her husband knows nothing of her past. Still, separated by many miles and just as many lies, the fates of the twins remains intertwined. What will happen in the next generation when their own daughter's storylines intersect? I don't know how else to convince you to read this, apart from saying, please read this. Next we have If He Had Been With Me, which is a YA romance. This book is heavy. This book is heavy. I knew going into this that this would be sad. That is basically all I've heard about it, that it is a sad romance book. But tell me why I was still shocked when I was sad at the end. I would say if you're going to pick this up, please make sure you're in a good mental state, just because I feel like if you're already not in a good mental state, it could have a negative effect on you. And honestly, after finishing this, I was so conflicted with how I felt and how I wanted to rate this, because you don't feel good afterwards. Like, it is painful. I ended up giving it 4 stars because, like I said, it really made me feel something, and I think that was the point. So I feel like the book achieved what the author intended it to do, but there were a few things that I think I would have liked to have changed. I don't know how to explain my like criticisms without kind of giving away parts of the book, so I obviously won't speak about them too in depth. I will just say I wish the ending of the book was a little bit longer, or like maybe the third quarter of the book. I wish that part was a little bit longer and we got to see a little bit more of that, because I feel like that part was just over so quickly, and then it was the ending and it was kind of like what? And I think my only other criticism is that the writing just wasn't my favorite. It just felt a little unpolished for me, but that's just me being nitpicky, but that is also why I gave it 4 stars instead of 5. But if you're gonna pick this up, please just know it's gonna be a sad book. Please be prepared for it to be a sad book, but I do still think it is a really beautiful book and still worth the read. I don't think I even told you what it was about. It's basically childhood friends to strangers to lovers, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, I promise we're almost at the end. I did read one non-fiction book this month, and it is Chosen by God by R.C. Sproul. I really apologize for my pronunciation, but this is a Christian non-fiction book. I think R.C. Sproul is incredibly intelligent, and his words are full of so much wisdom. I rated this book 4 stars. It's basically about predestination, so if you have questions about that, I would definitely recommend reading this. It's quite short, but it is packed full of information. So definitely check it out if you're curious about that sort of thing. Then I picked up Rock, Paper, Scissors. And firstly, I'll say, if you're in a reading slump, I would definitely recommend picking this up because it is just so quick and snappy. The chapters are short. There's so much going on. There's so many secrets that you're so desperate to uncover. I think I read this in like 2 days, which after being in a reading slump for like 2 weeks, this was just such a fast read for me and I really, really enjoyed it. I rated it 4 stars. I guessed some things, but I definitely didn't guess all of them. I feel like near the end, it is just plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, which is just so fun because every single page is like, wait, what? Wait, what? It's basically about a married couple whose marriage is just not doing too well, so they go on a weekend away to try and see if that will fix things, and they go and stay in this old redone chapel church type of thing, and it is just super creepy. And there's just a lot of secrets, a lot of plot twists, a lot going on, and it's like 300 pages, so it's a quick fun time. The last book that I finished in February was Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this is a book that has been on my TBR for so long. It is the only book out of TJR's backlist that I hadn't read up to this point, so of course I wanted to finish it so that I can say that I read all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, and I would say almost all of her books were amazing to me. Almost all of them I rated 4 or 5 stars, so obviously I love her writing, I love her storytelling, I feel like she is an amazing storyteller, but this one I gave 2.5 stars. I did not like it at all. I looked this one up on Goodreads and it says in the description that it's like under romance, but I would argue that it feels more of like a general fiction. And yes, we get a romance, but it's just not the main part of the story in my opinion. This book is about Elsie, who has just married this guy called Ben, and literally like 10 days later, he gets hit by a truck and he passes away. And I think that happens in like the first chapter. And then the rest of the book basically follows a then and now timeline, where the then timeline is her falling in love with Ben, how they met, how their relationship started, how they fell in love. And then the now timeline is her dealing with this grief of losing her husband and all of the things that come along with this. And what I will say is I can recognize that this book is objectively good. Like when I think about the reasons why I didn't like this book, I think it all comes down to personal preference. I feel like the way that grief was described was done fairly well, but I think overall this is just not a book for me. I think I just don't personally want to read about someone losing the love of their life and then trying to pick up all the pieces, because it's just sad. When people are dealing with the depths of grief, they're not very nice people. They're selfish, they're isolated, they cannot really think about other people. And that is so valid. That is literally just what grief does to people, especially right after they lose someone they love. It is just a very like isolating, selfish time. But just reading about the way that our main character treated the other people in her life, and also to be fair, there were some other people in her life that didn't treat her very well either, who were also dealing with the same grief. But it was just not the book for me. It was sad. The characters weren't very nice people until the end of the book. Obviously there was a bit of character development, which was good, I guess. But yeah, I almost DNF'd this like 3 times whilst reading. And also the romance that it did give, major insta love. Like major insta love. Like the 2 characters' relationship moved so quickly that it was just very hard to root for, because I was like, dude, chill out for 2 seconds. They're basically in love with each other after the first date, and it's like, let's calm down. And lastly, I have one DNF to talk about, but I'm gonna say it's a soft DNF, which basically just means I've decided to put it down for now, but I may come back to it at another point in time. The book itself is not awful, I just think it's not my time to read it, and that is Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. I would say the main reason I decided to DNF this book is because I am halfway through this book and I still do not want to pick it up. Like, I do not feel attached to the characters or the storyline. Not once have I been like, ooh, let's pick up Poster Girl, can't wait to read that. Like, I just have no desire to read this book right now, so I've decided to put it down for now, and I might pick it up in a few months or something. If you have read this book, give me your thoughts, because if you liked it, maybe you can convince me to read it. But those are all the books that I have to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed this reading wrap up. I always love filming these. I always love giving you my thoughts on all the books that I've read in the month. I'm so happy to be out of my reading slump. Let's hope that I don't go into another one anytime soon. I feel like coming out of a reading slump is like the best feeling ever, and being excited about books again is just the best feeling ever. It feels good. Feels good to be back. But I love you guys so much. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you in a few days for my March TBR. Goodbye.